Okay, so we've learned how to write an equation from a graph. Well, today we're going to do the opposite and take an equation and graph it ourselves, okay? So when we're looking at graphing an equation, we have to first be able to identify what is the slope of that equation, which is the m, and what is the y-intercept of that equation, which is the b. The slope is your rise over run. Your y-intercept is where it crosses the y-axis. We also call our y-axis or y-intercept our starting point. So once we identify what the slope and the y-intercept are, then we graph them. We first start by plotting the y-intercept because you can't graph something without having a starting point. So we always start at the y-intercept. And then I'll go over the slope here in a minute. So if I look at number 1, okay, if I look at my equation, which one's my slope and which one's my y-intercept? Because it's not always going to be this nice and pretty where it's mx plus b. It could be rearranged. So always remember, your slope is whatever's next to x, and your y-intercept is by itself by adding and subtracting. So keep that in mind for later. Well, this one's nice and easy. The 1/3 is my slope, and the -4 is my y-intercept. So this is where we're going to start, my y-intercept. And remember, the y-intercept is where it crosses the y-axis. So where is -4 on the y-axis? Well, that is down 4. So this is where I put my starting point, down 4. And now we're going to do the slope to find the rest of my graph. So 1/3 is my slope. Remember, 1/3 is the rise over the run. So if I have 1/3, okay, the top number tells you to go up and down, and then the bottom number tells you to go left or right. So since 1 is positive, that means I'm going to go up 1. And since 3 is positive, that means I'm going to go right 3. So here's what I'm going to do. From my y-intercept, I'm literally going to go up 1, right 3. Up 1, right 3. So here, if I start here, I go up 1, right 3. And this is where I put my next point. Then I continue. Up 1, right 3. And notice I've run out of room. That's because my graph has ended. But I have to remember that I went up 1, right 3 this way. So let's see if I can go the opposite and go the other way to finish off my graph. So what I mean by that is, from my starting point, I went right up 1, right 3. Well, to go the opposite direction, I'm going to go down 1, left 3. Down 1, left 3. So down 1, left 3. I can put a dot there. And notice I'm doing it correctly because my line is continuing. It's straight still. So then I do it again. Down 1, left 3. And I've made a perfectly straight line, so I would take my ruler if I had one, and then I would just draw my line. Okay, so let's do it again. Number 2. First, we find our slope and our y-intercept. So my slope is whatever's next to x, and my y-intercept is adding or subtracting. We always start with the y-intercept when I'm graphing. So where is positive 3 on my y-axis? Well, that's up 3. So I put a dot. Now, remember what we said. Slope is rise over run. But if you're looking at the same number as me, -5 is not a fraction. Well, how can I make -5 a fraction without changing the value? Well, the only way to do that is to make it a fraction and put the denominator as 1. Because think about it. -5 over 1 is -5. So I didn't change the value. It's just I needed it to make it a fraction. So since it is -5 over 1 now, which direction do I go? So remember, the top number tells you to go up and down. The bottom number tells you to go right or left. So since it's -5 on top, that means I'm going to go down 5. And since it's positive 1 on bottom, that means I'm going to go right 1. So from my starting point, I'm going to go down 5, right 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right 1, put a dot. Then if you look and I try to do it again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I end up off my graph and right 1. So this one I kind of have to let it float in thin air. And then over here, if I were to go the opposite direction to see if I can, I would go up 5, left 1. I would just take the opposite of these. So 1, 2, 3, again, I go off my graph, and so it's just a guesstimate. But I did make a perfectly straight line. So I just connect, and there's my line. So number 3, okay, first I identify my slope and my y-intercept. So my slope is whatever's next to x. And you're like, Miss, I don't see anything next to x. No, it's not 0. I know somebody's thought went there. But this does not mean it's 0 slope. What have we talked about before? If there is not a number in front of a variable, it's assumed that it is an invisible 1. So always keep that in mind. My y-intercept is what's adding and subtracting. So I'm going to start at my y-intercept, which is positive 2. So on the y-axis, I'm looking for positive 2, which is above 2 times. Again, we want our rise over our run to be a fraction. So how do I make positive 1 a fraction without changing the value? Put it over 1. So I have 1 over 1. They're both positive. So the top number, if it's positive, I'm going to go up. The bottom number, if it's positive, I'm going to go to the right. So from my starting point, I'm going to go up 1, right 1, 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 up 1, right 1. Then I've come to a stop because I don't have any more graph to keep plotting. It doesn't mean it ends forever. It means I could literally keep going, but my graph stopped. So then I go the opposite direction. Since I went up 1, right 1 to go this way, I need to go down 1, left 1 to continue on this side. So down 1, left 1, 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 down 1, left 1. And now I've completed my line. It's still perfectly straight. So then I graph it to connect, and there's my line. Number 4. Here, I have to find my slope and my y-intercept. Well, my slope is always next to x, but if you notice, nothing is being added or subtracted. When nothing is being added or subtracted, my y-intercept is 0. So notice, it's never going to say plus 0 or minus 0. If there is not a adding or subtracting of any number, my y-intercept is 0. What that means for my graph is that I start at the origin. It crosses the y-axis at 0. Now, 3 is my slope, but I need to make it a fraction without changing the value. So how do I make 3 a fraction? By putting it over 1. And since I have 3 over 1, the top number is positive, so that means I'm going to go up. And the bottom number is positive, so that means I'm going to go to the right. So I'm going to go from 0, up 3, right 1, up 3, right 1, up 3, right 1. 1, 2, 3, right 1, up 1, 2, 3, right 1. I've run out of space going up 3, right 1. So I'm going to go the opposite direction and just go down 3, left 1 from my starting point. Down 3, left 1, down 3, left 1. And then all I do is connect to make my line. So we've seen some special cases here. Keep in mind, just it follows the same rules for others. But when I graph my special cases, these are those vertical and horizontal lines. Always remember to ask yourself, which axis am I crossing? So look at number 5. Number 5 says y equals -5, okay? So here, when I'm graphing a special case, that means I'm going to cross the y-axis at -5. So my y-axis is here. -5 on this y-axis is right here. And since I'm crossing the y-axis, that means it's going to be a horizontal line. So that means it's going to go horizontally through the y-axis at -5. Number 6 says x equals -1. So this time we're going to cross the x-axis at -1. The x-axis is this line, and -1 on that x-axis is right here. Since I'm crossing the x-axis at -1, that means it's a vertical line like that. So it crosses the x-axis at -1. Number 7 is x equals 3. So here we're going to cross the x-axis at +3. So the x-axis, +3 on the x-axis is right here. And since we're crossing the x-axis at +3, that means it's going to be a vertical line going up and down. Number 8, y equals 8. So we're going to cross the y-axis this time at positive 8. So the y-axis is here. 8 on the y-axis is right there. Since we're crossing the y-axis, that means it's going to be a horizontal line. So that means it's going to go across the y-axis.